When it comes to Chinese American chain restaurants, nobody beats P.F. Chang's. After all, the food is so good that you may find yourself eating too much of it. These are the P.F. Chang's dishes to order next time you're craving takeout, ranked worst to best. Although beautiful to look at, P.F. Chang's Mongolian beef comes in last place in our roundup. We had high hopes, especially after sampling some of the chain's other beef dishes, which were delicious. But this one lacks what made the others really shine: attention to the beef.
It is a very simple dish with only 2 ingredients, and it originated at my mother's restaurant as a lamb dish.
P.F. Chang's describes this dish as flank steak with sweet soy glaze, garlic, and green onion. While we can confirm that all of those ingredients do indeed exist in the dish, none of them were particularly well crafted. The flank steak, which looked so appealing before biting in, ended up being an odd combination of tough and chewy. Besides just having an inconsistent texture, the lack of consistency between each piece was a bit of a letdown as well. While some bits were more cooked through, others were a tad on the fatty side. Instead of leaning into curating their beef slabs to a higher level of perfection, it seems P.F. Chang's opts to rely on the sweet soy glaze to bring the entire dish up a level. It's not a bad wager. The sweet soy sauce is amazing, but the way they absolutely douse this dish in the glaze gives them away. And it's not enough to save the entire meal. The crispy honey chicken was another dish we were eagerly anticipating, but not unlike the Mongolian beef, this dish also fell short of our expectations. First of all, when it arrived, every individual chicken bite was stuck together. We get it, it's honey chicken, so it should be sticky, but should it be that glued together? Probably not. When we slid it out of the takeout container onto the plate, the entire dish moved as one mass. Amusing? Yes. Concerning? Also yes. We picked apart the mound and grabbed a single piece of chicken. Stickiness aside, this is appetizing to look at, and the piece of chicken held promise. Unfortunately, upon biting in, it became clear that the ratio is just a little out of whack here. The fried coating makes up about 70% of the bite, which is at least 30% more than it should, even for takeout Chinese food. This might not have been as much of an issue if there wasn't a second factor at play. The honey seemingly seeped into the breading, making it more soggy and wilted than anything else. There was definitely no crisp factor, as the name would leave you to believe. Dare we say that the Chang spicy chicken is just the crispy honey chicken with some spice added? Well, according to P.F. Chang's, it's not. They describe it as chicken with their signature sweet spicy chili sauce and green onion. But despite how different that description sounds from crispy honey chicken, we think the two have more in common than not. We gave Chang spicy chicken points for the spice factor. The signature sweet spicy chili sauce truly is sweet and spicy all at once. That said, this dish has the same issues that the crispy honey chicken had. The sauce seeps into the breading, leaving you with a bite that is mostly soggy breading with a tiny bit of chicken encased inside. The chicken itself is nothing to write home about either. It's slightly slimy for our taste and ultimately bland. If P.F. Chang's made the chicken itself spicy instead of just focusing their efforts on seasoning the breading, maybe we would be bigger fans of this dish. But as it currently stands, it's just a less sticky, slightly spicier version of the previous chicken dish. Sesame chicken is an above-average dish at most Chinese restaurants. P.F. Chang's, however, does sesame chicken particularly well by piling on the sesame sauce and coating every slab of chicken in juicy, thick deliciousness. Additionally, sesame seeds adorn the top of the chicken, creating a subtle added texture that makes the entire dish stand out. The pieces of chicken themselves are a better cut than in P.F. Chang's other chicken staples, like the crispy honey and the Chang spicy. Here, they are larger and more rectangular, and every bite is a noticeably better ratio of chicken to breading. So instead of feeling like you're eating fried dough with a hint of chicken, you feel like you're getting the real meaty deal. And the chicken isn't even the best part of this delicacy. When it comes down to it, the broccoli steals the show here. Soaked in the same sesame sauce as the chicken, the broccoli has all of the flavor and none of the unhealthiness of the chicken. If we could order sesame broccoli, we would. But until someone decides to actually create that dish, ordering sesame chicken and picking out the broccoli is the next best thing. While good, P.F. Chang's sesame chicken offering ultimately doesn't rank higher because it's still just chicken. In our opinion, P.F. Chang's does a much better job with their seafood than they do with poultry. Exhibit A, the Dynamite Shrimp.
Dynamite Shrimp has become one of the most popular items at P.F. Chang's.
This appetizer, which could also function as a meal, presents a lot of the same issues as the crispy honey and Chang spicy chicken. There's way too much tempura batter here, and again, the batter is not quite as crispy as we'd like it to be. The key difference, of course, is what lies beneath the batter. Where the aforementioned options revolve around the chicken, this delicacy is built around shrimp, and it turns out that makes a difference. Unlike the chicken options, this app doesn't skimp on the amount of shrimp in each piece. It's far more than the bite-sized nugget that's standard with the chicken. The juicy piece of shellfish is flavorful and thick, tasting both salty and fresh all at once, and leaving you ready to pop the next piece into your mouth. The meat is not the only upgrade that the Dynamite Shrimp boasts. This appetizer is tossed in a sriracha aioli, which almost automatically makes it delicious, and plated with shredded cabbage, lettuce, and carrots. The only qualm we have, beyond the shrimp's overbattered nature, is that P.F. Chang's lists this app as spicy. This made us excited about potential heat, and ultimately we were disappointed. The Dynamite Shrimp is good, but not spicy. There's nothing like a solid vegetable spring roll at any restaurant, and P.F. Chang's is no exception. On P.F. Chang's menu, they're described as crispy rolls stuffed with julienne veggies and a sweet chili dipping sauce. That description just about perfectly sums up P.F. Chang's vegetable spring rolls. The rolls, unlike other misnamed menu items, are actually quite crispy. The wrapping is thin and neatly folded, although one of ours did come slightly misshapen. However, it didn't affect the taste, which overall was flavorful and enduring. The julienne veggies also hold their own. These rolls do have room for improvement, though. The one word that wasn't quite accurate in their description is stuffed. That adjective conjures images of a roll that's absolutely bursting with vegetables, which simply isn't the case here. Instead, they coat the bottom half of the tube, leaving a lot of space for air in every bite. To amp up their roll game, P.F. Chang's could definitely throw another handful of veggies in there. At the end of the day, though, the lack of vegetables isn't a deal breaker. These rolls have the signature spring roll taste, and honestly, dunking them in the sweet chili sauce results in a pop of flavor that makes up for any of the potential drawbacks of the dish. As a second roll option from P.F. Chang's, the pork egg rolls are indisputably better than their vegetable spring roll competition. We weren't rooting for these, honestly. For health reasons alone, we assumed we'd favor the veggie option. However, one bite into this appetizer, and it was clear. We immediately wanted to finish the whole roll, which when you're 15 dishes of P.F. Chang's deep, means something. The pork is dry and shredded to a point that makes it less offensive than we were imagining. And the julienne veggies pack the same flavor they did in the spring roll. Except here, there is definitely more of them. The roll as a whole is thicker, more densely packed, and as a small bonus, this duo came more neatly wrapped than the spring rolls did. Beyond plating this appetizer with rice noodles, P.F. Chang's includes a side of sweet and sour mustard sauce, which is a definite showstopper and, surprisingly, errs more on the sour side than the sweet. Taken with the semi-sweet pork and julienne vegetables, the sauce adds a powerful punch, carrying from the first bite through to the aftertaste. While both roll options are flavorful, if your diet doesn't restrict you from the pork egg rolls, we'd recommend giving them a try first. The veggie rolls will always be there for the next Chinese night. The miso glazed salmon is hard to rank fairly because, in full transparency, we got it delivered. Not that delivery should affect taste to any notable degree, but if it ever were to, it would be in the case of a fresh fish fillet. This dish is meant to come flying out of the pan, onto a plate, and maybe even still be a little too hot by the time it gets to you. Instead, our delivery salmon came off the stove, was sealed into a plastic container, traveled 25 blocks downtown, and then up 5 flights of stairs. A different journey, and one that it's easy to imagine might make anyone a little less flavorful than they usually are. The delivery salmon still pulled a fairly high ranking, all things considered. It takes 8th place out of 15 dishes, which means that with this menu option, we are officially transitioning from dishes we're less crazy for to the top-ranking dishes that we're all about. The salmon tasted fresh, if a little dry. The work P.F. Chang's did to char the skin to a buttery crisp was definitely the standout factor here, and the spinach, cabbage, and garlic ginger aromatics made for a strong backdrop. Even if you're not big on mushrooms, the Asian mushrooms in this dish are well cooked and seasoned to a point where they're hardly objectionable. Overall, we'd recommend the salmon, especially if you live closer to a P.F. Chang's. Brussels sprouts are almost difficult to rank for a simple reason. Having Brussels sprouts is legitimately always better than not having them. Even if they aren't the most memorable sprouts you've ever had, you still have the privilege of enjoying one of nature's greatest creations. Small, round, bite-sized vegetables, there's nothing more convenient, healthy, or fun to eat than that. With that caveat explained, we will say that P.F. Chang's Kung Pao Brussels sprouts aren't the most delicious we've ever had. On the menu, P.F. Chang's describes them as wok-charred Brussels sprouts with peanuts, chili pods, and Kung Pao sauce. Maybe it was just a case of too much Kung Pao sauce, but these sprouts did not have a charred texture. In fact, each individual leaf was practically dripping, and the dish as a whole was mush with peanuts and chili pods sprinkled in. The peanuts were an interesting touch, but the chili pods were bizarrely tough to bite into, and we're not sure how much flavor they actually contributed to the appetizer. Usually, you can convince yourself you're doing something healthy by opting for Brussels sprouts over another appetizer. In this case, the sheer amount of sweet sauce makes it less feasible to do so. However, these are still sprouts, so order away. If we were giving superlatives to these rankings, the beef with broccoli would take most unexpected. As rare consumers of red meat due to flavor and texture alone, we did not have high hopes for P.F. Chang's classic dish. The beef, by all accounts, shouldn't taste that different than the lowest-ranking Mongolian beef. Both are flank steaks, and although P.F. Chang's menu doesn't specify, it looks like the beef with broccoli is slathered in the same sweet soy glaze as its Mongolian cousin. But for some reason, these beef dishes could not taste more different. Perhaps it was the addition of ginger garlic aromatics in this one that did the trick, or maybe the green onion. Either way, we couldn't get enough of this meal. We ended up eating more steak than we expected to, and powered straight through all of the broccoli, which was doused in sauce. There's nothing like fresh steamed veggies smothered in a sweet-tasting soy sauce that retains a slightly beefy flavor. The beef with broccoli was an unexpected favorite, but the Chang's chicken lettuce wraps were a completely expected favorite. First of all, it can be made to be gluten-free, which is an added bonus when you're loading up on Chinese food. Second, it is clearly fresh, and unlike other dishes, you know exactly what you're getting. The lettuce is buttery and surprisingly sturdy enough to effectively wrap the chicken rice noodles and sauce all in one bundle. The chicken is also incredible, and we will never know how to replicate it because, as P.F. Chang states on their menu, it's a secret. Actually, what they say exactly is a secret family recipe in our signature dish. Enough said. Talk about a confident glow. While the crispy green beans only come in fourth overall in this rating, which we're basing on a healthy mix of look, taste, and nutritional value, they're absolutely number one when it comes to the most addicting dish you can get at P.F. Chang's. We down these in about 3 minutes flat, which, as you can imagine, made for a rough rest of the taste test. In true fried food fashion, the crispy green beans are just as incredible going down as they are terrible to digest. These fall in the same realm as the Kung Pao Brussels sprouts, a vegetable that probably has lost most of its healthiness by the time it's served. Even still, it's one that you can easily convince yourself isn't that bad. It's a vegetable after all. It has to be at least a little bit good for you. These incredible, truly crispy fried wonders are tempura battered and come with not one but 2 sides of P.F. Chang's signature spicy dipping sauce. We found the most delectable way to inhale these was to practically soak them in the sauce before biting. You'll know you're doing it right if, like us, you had about a quarter of a plate of green beans left with 2 scraped clean sauce containers. P.F. Chang's second option for green beans, the chili garlic green beans, does not evoke quite as much passion. Were they good? Yes. Were they better than the fried green beans? Debatable. However, when it comes to health and factoring in how each dish made us feel after eating, these green beans edged out the competition. Made with fiery red chili sauce, fresh garlic, and Szechuan preserves, these green beans are another P.F. Chang's menu item with the fire symbol next to them that ended up not actually being all that hot. In this case, though, the lack of spiciness worked for them. They are great and somewhat light tasting on their own, but also versatile enough to mix into any other dish you might have tacked onto the order. These green beans are absolutely drenched in the chili sauce, which is thicker than we had expected and makes us question how much healthier than the crispy green beans these could actually be. But then we caught sight of our empty secret sauce containers and felt assured. These green beans are definitely the more nutritious and overall less regrettable option. The level of mastery and innovation P.F. Chang's brings to its hand-folded crab wontons is staggering.
Those wontons are too big, my friend.
From the crispy shell that you can tell is freshly baked to the crab filling, which the menu describes as creamy, to the spicy plum sauce, there's nothing not to love about this plate. The crab wontons dish is yet another instance of P.F. Chang's seafood really shining, as the meat in these delicacies was fresh and perfectly shredded, despite being mixed with cream. The bottom part of the wonton is completely full, and something about the phrase hand-folded just makes these seem superior. If you're going to order one appetizer and one appetizer only for your Chinese food night, we highly recommend considering the hand-folded crab wontons. Finally, we have the ultimate dish to be beat, shrimp dumplings. This appetizer was the most authentic tasting of anything on the P.F. Chang's menu. When ordering, you're given a choice, pan-fried or steamed. We opted for steamed, thinking it may provide a much-needed reprieve from the copious amounts of other fried dishes on the menu, and we were right. Not only was it a refreshing change of pace while tasting, but the steamed nature of the shrimp dumplings ultimately placed them permanently in a league above the rest of the dishes we had delivered. Beneath the sticky, soft dough, the shrimp dumplings were truly stuffed with their namesake meat. The shrimp was just as fresh, flavorful, and delicious as it was in the Dynamite Shrimp option. However, without the fried factor to detract, the shrimp taste truly own the whole flavor profile. These pair nicely with the semi-spicy sauce that they're served with, but are also just as good without. Although it was a tight race for first between the hand-folded crab wontons and the shrimp dumplings, we felt lighter and less sluggish after finishing the latter. That, plus their pure and bold shrimp flavor, ultimately put the dumplings ahead. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more MASH videos about your favorite restaurant chains are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.